Chapter 31 An Invitation from the X-Men. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Spell reversal He LV2, 1/300, this generates a repulsive force centered on the target. The minimum power is twice the initial level, potentially reaching a positive infinity, like a mini supernova. Information flooded Sumu's mind, and his mastery of the He reversal technique skyrocketed. He immediately used it again, and a black-red singularity formed above his index finger, growing from the size of a mung bean to a ping-pong ball, the repulsive force multiplying several times over. Looking at the singularity, Sumu couldn't help but think back to the Hulk with a certain fondness. Those fights were the best. That feeling of raw power, of taking a beating and just shrugging it off, unforgettable. Hold up. I overheard Coulson and Fury talking. There's some weird crater in New Mexico, with a hammer stuck in the middle that nobody can lift. Doesn't that mean Thor got his ass kicked by Odin and landed on Earth? A depowered hammer god should be a decent challenge, but Loki's destroyer armor. Now that's a target. A grin spread across Sumu's face, new toys to play with. He found Spider-Woman again, no longer where he had left her, but perched on a skyscraper. Even though she didn't actively participate, and was never in danger, he was still grateful for the assist. Without her help, keeping his immunity to the mutant suppression device a secret would have been a pain, which would undoubtedly have taken a lot of the fun out of him. Thanks for your help. I'll bring you a gift next time to show my appreciation. That piqued Gwen's curiosity. What kind of present would this powerful white-haired devil bring? Then, she heard him chuckle, a mysterious sound. Just you wait, I think you'll really like it. Gwen wanted to ask more, but he stepped off the building and vanished, leaving no trace. It wasn't until he was gone that she realized she'd forgotten to ask how he'd gotten so much stronger, so fast. Guess I'll have to wait until next time. I'm looking forward to it. Gwen hummed a little tune, jumped off the building, and swung away on her webs. Sumu wasn't rushing to New Mexico just yet. Instead, he hit up a fancy restaurant to grab some food. At level 3, he couldn't replace eating with energy, but he figured he'd be able to at level 4, even when he could, he wouldn't stop. Eating was fun. Sumu's appetite was costing him tens of thousands of dollars a pop, but that was chump change these days, and he didn't sweat it. As he got stronger, the money flowed easier. Leaving the restaurant, Sumu was about to head to New Mexico to find the hammer god for fun when he spotted some familiar faces ahead. They looked a little different than in the movies, but their features were pretty distinctive. If they hadn't been grouped together, he might not have recognized them. Yep, blocking his path were none other than the X-Men. Front and center was Professor X, the kindly old guy in the wheelchair with the insane telepathic powers. Behind him was Cyclops pushing the wheelchair, and beside them were Phoenix and Storm. X-Men. What do you want? Sumu asked, puzzled. Aside from sharing an enemy in Stryker, he had nothing to do with them. Professor X reached out with his mind, and got nothing. It was like an ant trying to comprehend an elephant. His mind was an endless void. Seeing him, Professor X knew that this young man was even more dangerous than Jean. Even when facing Jean, he could still sense her mind, but facing the white-haired demon, his abilities flatlined. Hearing Sumu's question, Professor X gave a gentle smile. My boy, I'd like to invite you to join Xavier's school for gifted youngsters. The students there are mutants, just like you. If you join the school, you'll never be alone again. And you're in a lot of danger right now. The government and the military are planning something against you. Even with your powers, you can't fight them all. Join us, and the X-Men will negotiate with the government and the military to get that bounty off your head. Cyclops, Phoenix, and Storm looked at Sumu with confidence. They were sure that unless he was a complete idiot, he would jump at the chance to join Xavier's school. First, they were all mutants. They knew the pain of being ostracized after their powers manifested, the loneliness of feeling like the world had turned against them. Mutants crave their own kind. Second, he was wanted by the government. As powerful as he was, he couldn't stand against the full might of the military, plus an army of unknown mutants. He'd nearly been killed by Stryker's strike team. He had to know that, once he was at the school, the professor would guide him, help him control his temper. The X-Men would have a serious powerhouse on their side. Cyclops and the others were looking forward to that day, but the response shattered their fantasy, reminding them that they didn't understand him at all. Sorry, I don't feel lonely, and I'm not interested in joining Xavier's school. Cyclops stared at him, stunned. He couldn't believe he'd said that. It was incomprehensible to someone who had been called a freak by his classmates after his mutation manifested. If you don't stay with other mutants, you will get called a freak by others. Won't you be hated by others? What about the army? You can't face an army of mutants whose specific abilities are unknown. Then, Sumu's lips curled into a smile, growing bigger and bigger until it was wild and unhinged. Ha ha ha. They insult me, kill. They chase me, kill. They condemn me, still kill. I believe that as the bodies pile up, they'll slowly realize the error of their ways, change their minds, and finally come to this conclusion, that the white-haired demon is an upright, law-abiding citizen. Chapter 32 Black Phoenix, White Devil, you are too extreme. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cyclops stared at Sumu, stunned. He couldn't believe the White Devil had said that. You're a monster. Phoenix and Storm shared his shock, watching the White Devil. His unrestrained smile and cold blue eyes sent chills down their spines. Now they understood what the professor meant. If they let the White Devil run wild, the consequences would be catastrophic. Even the professor, who knew the White Devil was losing his way, knew they couldn't let him continue. Soon, he'd be a walking disaster. Thinking about what was likely to happen, Professor X's expression turned serious. Sumu, you're on a dangerous path, and you can't keep going down it. You have the power to change the world. That power should be used for good, not just for killing. Killing doesn't solve anything. It only makes things worse, leading to a point of no return. Cyclops, Storm, and Phoenix all nodded in agreement. They strongly believed in Professor X's philosophy. Peace maintained by force is unstable, only through peaceful means can mutants and humans coexist. They fought for this ideal, constantly thwarting the Brotherhood of Mutants' evil plans and forming the X-Men to fight crime and change people's perceptions of mutants, and that included saving the White Devil, which had become the X-Men's top priority. Sumu listened to Professor X, looking thoughtful. You're right. Peace built on violence can't last. The professor's face lit up. He thought he'd gotten through to him. But suddenly, the White Devil flashed that familiar, chilling smile, giving them a bad feeling. What if there's another way? What if there just hasn't been enough violence? What if I'm not strong enough? If I'm powerful enough, my very existence will silence all dissent. If I'm strong enough, no one will dare say no. Then that's it. That's real peace. Professor X's face fell. He knew he had failed. Sumu scanned the X-Men. He paid closest attention to Phoenix, catching a flicker of red in her eyes, but the Dark Phoenix was still locked away by the professor, and Phoenix was no match for Sumu at this time. The onlookers screamed and ran. Soon, the street was empty except for Sumu and the X-Men, facing 2 level 5 mutants, 1 level 4, and a level 3 tagalong. Sumu smiled and took a step forward. His blue eyes glowed, and an immense repulsive force radiated outward, destroying everything around him at incredible speed. Huge cracks spread from Sumu's feet, covering dozens of yards. Only a small area in front of the X-Men remained intact. Storm created powerful winds and worked with Phoenix's telekinesis to resist the force, but it was so strong that they could only retreat. Cyclops ripped off his glasses and unleashed a blast of laser energy, aiming straight for the arrogant White Devil, but the laser, which could slice through steel, slowed to a crawl just inches from him. Sumu watched curiously as the laser inched closer. The unlimited spell couldn't completely block it, at least not at level 2, but as he leveled up, it would easily stop lasers, poison, even space attacks. He still had to deal with the laser now, though, to Cyclops' shock, Sumu casually reached out and blocked the beam. It spread weakly against his flesh, unable to penetrate, and visibly faded. What? Cyclops was stunned, wondering if something was wrong with his powers. How can he stop my laser with his bare hands? Professor X knew what was happening. He's not just blocking it. He's absorbing the energy from your laser. What? Phoenix and Storm were even more shocked. Professor, doesn't the White Devil's energy absorption only work on a small scale? How can he absorb Scott's laser? Professor X looked grim. There was only one explanation. The White Devil's powers grow stronger over time, and he gains new abilities. And his potential seems limitless. He's getting stronger, faster and faster. Phoenix and the others were stunned. It was the only thing that explained it. The X-Men, known for their bravery, felt a twinge of fear. Was there really a mutant this terrifying? Not even a level 5 mutant could do this. They came to a unanimous decision. No matter the cost, they had to stop the White Devil and bring him back. They realized that if he went unchecked, the result wouldn't just be a disaster, it could be the end of the world. In a red sea of consciousness, a figure with red hair and eyes watched the outside world through Phoenix. She stared at the white-haired figure and listened to the professor's shocking analysis. The Dark Phoenix looked at the White Devil in disbelief. Professor X had made her question her own extremism, and she even hated her own power, but now, she wanted to say one thing: what am I? That guy is the real devil. He's way too extreme. Chapter 33 Unlimited Technique Level 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The spell amplified his strength, energy absorption sucked up the laser's power, and spell reversal healed his constantly damaged palm. This combination allowed Sumu to withstand a laser beam that could easily slice through steel with nothing but his bare hands. The system notifications flooded his mind. Energy point +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Unlimited spell experience +1. Leveling up energy absorption was proving harder than reaching level 3, and his level 2 unlimited spell was only gaining experience at a level 2 rate. Still, it was increasing rapidly and nearing the next level. Sumu used his palm to block the laser and took another step forward. An immense pressure suddenly erupted. The powerful repulsive force generated by the spell reversal spread hundreds of meters, crushing buildings in its path. Everything was obliterated by the demon's step. Even Storm and Phoenix, combined, couldn't withstand the sudden surge of repulsive force. The X-Men were instantly thrown back. Even with Phoenix's telekinetic shield, they were still cut by flying debris. Snap! The sound of his shoes hitting the ground echoed as the terrifying white-haired demon continued his advance. Even as they scrambled to reorganize their defenses, the immense pressure immediately reached a point where Phoenix and Storm could barely hold it back. It felt like their carefully constructed defense would shatter any second under the relentless repulsion, crushing them into dust. Cyclops, who had fallen, struggled to his feet, ignoring the pain racking his body. He unleashed a full-power laser beam from his eyes, targeting the white-haired demon. Storm did the same, flying through the air with her wind powers, summoning powerful lightning bolts to strike the demon. But this time, against an even stronger attack, the white-haired demon, who had been using his hands to defend, simply stopped and grinned at them. Just moments before, Sumu had heard the system's notification. Unlimited spell experience +1. Congratulations, unlimited spell leveled up. Unlimited spell LV3, 1/1000 manipulate atomic level matter, dominate space. The closer an object is to the user, the slower it moves, ultimately never touching the user. The blinding lightning and scorching laser beam suddenly froze just before hitting Sumu. The intense laser, which had been creeping forward, stopped completely, and was then blasted backward at an even greater speed. As the unlimited spell leveled up, a flood of information poured into Sumu's mind. The range of the spell expanded rapidly, from 10 centimeters around him to 20, 30, finally stopping at 50 centimeters. Compared to level 2, the range had increased fivefold, and the laser attack he couldn't completely block before was now effortlessly deflected. The X-Men no longer posed any threat to him. Seeing this, Cyclops exclaimed in disbelief. What just happened? Why did my laser suddenly stop working? His laser had been a threat moments ago, but now it was completely useless. Professor X answered his question. The demon's defensive abilities just took a massive leap forward. He's completely immune to your laser attack now, just as I suspected. His power is constantly evolving. Realizing that they were no match for the demon in their current state, Professor X knew they needed a long-term plan if they hoped to guide him back to a better path. He immediately called out, "Stop, son. We mean you no harm." But the white-haired demon continued to advance, showing no signs of stopping. Phoenix, struggling to maintain her defense against the immense pressure, was trembling. Wounds covered her body, and it seemed she wouldn't be able to hold on much longer. The red color in her eyes, like burning embers, intensified, as if she was about to lose control at any moment. Growing even more anxious, Professor X tried to soothe Jean while pleading with the white-haired demon, "We have no ill intentions. If we've upset you, we'll leave right away." Still, the white-haired demon continued forward. Even Storm and Cyclops noticed Phoenix's struggle. Seeing the demon's relentless pressure and the professor's near failure to contain Jean, they began to despair. They didn't know who would win if Jean lost control and battled the demon, but they knew they would be caught in the crossfire, and New York would be destroyed. All they wanted to do was recruit the white-haired demon to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters. It was never their intention to cause such a devastating disaster, and as it spiraled out of control, there was nothing they could do to stop it. They didn't expect the white-haired demon, with his previous unrestrained behavior, to suddenly stop and let them go. But as they braced for the worst, waiting for Phoenix to completely lose control and engage the demon, they suddenly noticed that as Phoenix reached her absolute limit, the demon stopped. The terrifying pressure vanished instantly. The demon had ceased his attack and was now looking at them coldly. The fear of death enveloped them, making it hard to breathe. The silence stretched on, and minutes crawled by in a tense atmosphere. Suddenly, the X-Men saw the demon move and immediately braced themselves for a potential attack. But what happened next stunned them. The demon, who moments ago looked ready to kill them, took a single step and vanished without a trace. What? The sudden removal of the deadly threat left them bewildered. The demon had been on the verge of destroying them, and now, without warning, he's gone. Storm said tentatively. Could it be that he was actually influenced by the professor? Professor X responded, "It's possible, but unlikely. I believe there's a second explanation. The demon has some form of crisis sense or even the ability to see the future. He used this power to foresee Jean losing control and left accordingly." After hearing the professor's words, Storm and Cyclops, with the exception of Phoenix who had fallen unconscious, carefully reviewed the events and came to the conclusion that the professor's hypothesis was more probable. Has he unlocked yet another mutant power, or has he possessed this talent all along and only now revealed it? Cyclops had never encountered a mutant with so many diverse talents. Chapter 34 Are you COSing the White Devil? You are listening at novelfull.audio. The girl with the storm powers chimed in, "This is seriously scary. If the White Devil's speed truly has no limit, won't he be unstoppable?" Professor X was quiet for a long moment, then finally said, "That's exactly why we need to guide him onto the right path." Cyclops cut in, "How do we do that?" The question hung in the air, and silence descended. Meanwhile, Sumu floated in the sky, covering hundreds of yards with each step. He'd broken off the fight with the X-Men and chosen to leave for two key reasons. First, Jean Grey possessed the Phoenix Force. This power is one of the most formidable in the Marvel multiverse, literally the embodiment of all life and emotion. As an ancient power, the complete Phoenix Force could decompose, transform, reorganize, create, and destroy anything. It could even warp cause and effect and timelines, traveling to any latitude, dimension, or universe freely. The full Phoenix Force transcends even the almighty universe. Even the tiny fragment of the Phoenix Force within Jean Grey was still a terrifying power, easily making her a level 5 mutant and an incredibly powerful one at that. Since Sumu wasn't sure if his unlimited spell could block the Black Phoenix's ability to break down matter, or if the reversal spell's regeneration rate was faster than Jean Grey's destructive capability, he wasn't willing to risk it. Second, he knew a conflict between the X-Men and Colonel Stryker was inevitable. He'd asked Tony Stark to find Stryker, but Stryker had gone into hiding, maybe knowing the White Devil was after him, and even Tony couldn't find him. S.H.I.E.L.D. had the same luck, so Sumu planned to use the X-Men to draw Stryker out. A man who hated mutants as much as Stryker would definitely strike. The bait was set, he just had to wait for the fish to bite. In a small, out-of-the-way town in New Mexico, the customers in a diner stared at a strange group of people. One of them had just broken a cup. The others had apologized, but it had still drawn attention. Then, the bell above the door jingled, and a slender figure walked in, immediately taking the customer's attention off the clumsy guy. "Hey, are you cosplaying the White Devil?" A chubby guy near the door craned his neck, spotting the striking newcomer with white hair and sunglasses. He knew the outfit well. It was exactly like a level 5 mutant, because the White Devil's powers and style were so cool, and he was famous worldwide. Tons of young guys were always trying to cosplay him. This little chubby guy had wanted to, but he was too short and too fat to pull it off, so he'd given up. He was jealous of the handsome man who just walked in. The guy's height, build, and even face were similar to the White Devil's. If he didn't know the White Devil was in New York, he'd think this guy was the real deal. Sumu heard the little fat man complimenting his costume. Sumu was taken aback at first, then quickly understood. He grinned mischievously and said, "Thanks, man. Your hair's cool too." The little chubby guy was thrilled to be recognized by a cosplay boss. He glanced at the reflection in the glass. He was handsome. "I knew Tom and the others were just jealous and messing with me." Sumu just walked past the narcissistic little fat man. Sol and his crew watched him approach and sat down at their table. Thanks to the description in the Thor movie and a little help from S.H.I.E.L.D., Sumu had found this town. After resting in a hotel for a day, he'd seen that Sol and his friends were at the diner from the movie and decided to come say hello. Sumu grinned. "Hi everyone, I'm Sumu. People call me the White Devil. Can I join you?" Everyone except Thor burst out laughing. Jane Foster, Thor's future girlfriend, said, "You're the White Devil. What a coincidence. We have a Norse god of thunder here. Right, Thor?" Sumu ignored the teasing and looked at Thor in mock shock. "Oh my god, you're Thor, the son of Odin, future king of Asgard." Since landing on Earth, Thor had been repeatedly frustrated. No one believed he was Thor, the god of thunder. Hearing this guy recognize him, Thor felt an instant connection. "Yes, I am Thor, the son of Odin. You have excellent taste. After I find Mjolnir and return to Asgard, I will reward you handsomely." Sumu's grin widened. "Thank you so much, Your Highness Thor." The other three were speechless. One Thor was enough, now there were two. Thor thought for a moment about Sumu's introduction and the reactions of everyone around him. "Are you famous? Why is everyone looking at you?" Before Sumu could answer, Jane Foster said, "He's cosplaying someone famous." After Jane Foster explained cosplay, Sol smiled at Sumu. "That White Devil's a wimp. You should cosplay me, the great god of thunder, Thor. That would be much cooler." Sumu didn't say anything, but his smile deepened. Chapter 35 The Hammer God Who Lost His Hammer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A heavy-set guy at the diner counter told his buddy, "Man, you missed it. Some kind of satellite crashed in the desert. We were watching it when the feds showed up." Jane Foster, curious, asked the guy, "Excuse me, did you say a satellite crashed?" "Yep," he replied. Professor Eric, equally intrigued, chimed in, "What did it look like?" The guy elaborated, "I don't know much about satellites, but I know it's heavy as hell. Ain't nobody gonna pick it up." Hearing this, Thor jumped up, clapped the guy on the shoulder, and demanded, "Where is it?" The startled man, taken aback by Thor's pushiness, still answered, "Go west, about 50 miles from here." As Thor headed out, the guy called after him, "Don't bother, the army's already there." But Thor ignored him. Striding out of the diner, Jane Foster and the others followed, leaving only Sumu behind. He wasn't in a rush. Instead, he ordered an egg tart and savored it. When he finally strolled outside, he caught Jane Foster asking Thor, who was trying to buy a horse at the pet store, "Need a ride?" Just as Thor settled into the passenger seat, a familiar voice, smooth and cool, came from the side. "Mind if I hitch a ride too?" Jane Foster and Thor looked over to see the white-haired guy from the diner. casually tapping the window with his knuckle, flashing a bright smile. "Oh, sure, but we're about to do something crazy dangerous." "You positive you want in?" Jane Foster asked. "Absolutely." A sly smile played on Sumu's lips. "I finally meet the legendary Thor, God of Thunder, and I'm just supposed to walk away." On the way, Jane Foster said to Thor, "I've never done anything like this before." "Have you?" Thor grinned mysteriously. "Tons of times." Before he could elaborate, the white-haired guy in the back chimed in, "Yeah, me too." "It's no biggie." Thor turned to Sumu, curious. "Oh yeah, Sumu. What kind of stuff have you done?" "I've taken down entire gang hideouts single-handed. I've faced down army units and mutant squads and walked away without a scratch. I've trashed giant robots, and gone toe-to-toe with some seriously nasty monsters. Oh, and I almost leveled New York during a run-in with the X-Men." Thor blinked, surprised. He hadn't expected Sumu's life to be so action-packed. But then he remembered Sumu was playing the part of the white-haired devil right now. Could these be the tales of the white-haired devil? Jane Foster chuckled, "You guys are something else. One of you thinks he's the white-haired devil, and the other thinks he's the god of thunder." Before she could finish, Thor interrupted, "I am the god of thunder. I don't just think I am. When I get my powers back, you'll see." Seeing the serious look on Thor's face, Jane Foster thought back to when she first met Thor, when he fell out of the sky. If he really was the god of thunder stripped of his power by Odin and exiled, it would all make sense, but just as she was starting to believe Thor, Sumu in the back seat smiled and nodded. Yeah, I believe Thor's the god of thunder, and I'm the white-haired devil." "Jane, you gotta trust us." Jane, who was just starting to trust Thor, immediately shook her head after hearing Sumu's words. "I'm losing my mind, going along with this, but they stole my life's work, and I'm getting it back." Hearing the pretty girl in front of him, Sol grinned and said to her, "Don't worry, when I get Mjolnir back, I will definitely ask them to return all the materials." Sumu also nodded, "Yeah, we're gonna make them give it all back." Jane Foster just smiled, non-committal. Clearly, she wasn't convinced. Before they got too close to their destination, they parked the car in a secluded spot, hiked up a hillside, and used binoculars to scout the temporary military base below. Night had fallen, and the base was lit up by floodlights. After a moment, Sol handed Jane Foster his coat to keep her warm and then prepared to charge down the hill, but Jane Foster stopped him, her expression serious. "You think you can just walk in there, grab our stuff, and walk out?" Sol grinned confidently. "Nope. I'm gonna fly out." With that, he bolted toward the military base without waiting for Jane Foster's response. Boom. A sudden thunderclap split the sky, followed by a blinding flash of lightning that lit up the entire world. Under its light, he crashed into the military base and was taking down one agent after another. Thor finally looked like the god he claimed to be. Seeing Thor battling so many agents, Jane Foster was worried. Suddenly, a wry laugh came from beside her. "Don't sweat it. Even if Thor can't get his powers back, I'm here. I'll handle everything." The worried look on Jane Foster's face froze. Because of the previous preparations, she might still have the fantasy that Thor is the legendary Thor, but she never expected that Sumu really the white-haired devil. Not only because the white-haired devil is in New York at this time, it is impossible to appear in New Mexico, but also because the white-haired devil in her impression will not be Sumu's unreliable appearance. As the strongest level 5 mutant, the white-haired devil who is enough to wipe out a city in a short time has always been a cruel and cold man in the news, and it is impossible to be the funny guy in front of him who always has a smirk. At that moment, Thor fought his way to Mjolnir. Confidently, he wrapped his hand around the hammer's handle, ready to pick it up, but nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. After several attempts, Thor finally gave up, falling to his knees and roaring in despair. Seeing this, Jane Foster turned and headed back towards the car. She was going to find a rescuer, but she was stopped by a tall, white-haired figure. Even now, the figure wore an unreliable smile. "Didn't I say I was here?" Jane Foster didn't have time to argue. Su-mu, we need to leave, fast. We need to find Dr. Eric and get Thor out of here before he gets hurt, but Su-mu's smile didn't fade, and he still blocked her path. Just when she was losing patience, she realized something was different about Su-mu. The smile was the same, but it had shifted from goofy to chillingly cold, making her feel uneasy and cold all over. It wasn't the unreliable Su-mu anymore. It was the white-haired devil who said to her with a hard face. I said. I'm here, please read and collect it. Chapter 36 Template Fusion Degree 56. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Under Jane Foster's wide-eyed gaze, Su-mu stood up, casually stuck his hands in his pockets, and sauntered toward the base. He moved with a leisurely air, as if he were headed for a relaxing resort instead of a heavily guarded military installation. Seoul's earlier trespass had already put the agents on edge. So, when Su-mu approached, they immediately spotted him. A few agents rushed to intercept him, but they stopped short when they got a good look at his face. White hair, blue eyes, it's the White Devil. One of them shouted. Unlike civilians, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents knew the White Devil well and understood the sheer terror he inspired. The X-Men might dream of peaceful mutant-human coexistence, and the Brotherhood of Mutants might want to wipe out humanity and establish mutant rule, but the White Devil? He was just a mutant with immense power, driven by no particular purpose, simply doing whatever he pleased. Without an ideology or clear goals, he had no constraints, making his actions impossible to predict. He was the ultimate wild card. Another agent hesitated. Isn't the White Devil supposed to be in New York? Could this be a copycat? The thought crossed everyone's mind, but as the white-haired figure drew closer, their doubts vanished. Su-mu took a step forward, unleashing a wave of pressure from the spell reversal, a ripple of heat, that sent the surrounding agents flying. The alarm blared. Radio calls crackled with urgent notifications. The White Devil is here. The White Devil is here. Unlike the fun they'd had facing Thor, the agents now moved with precise efficiency, instantly drawing their weapons and preparing for a serious fight. Hawkeye, who had been positioned high up during Seoul's attack, lost his earlier relaxed demeanor when he heard the alert in his headset. He stared grimly toward the base's entrance. A figure stood there, hands in pockets, moving forward at an even pace. As he advanced, a powerful repelling force radiated outward for dozens of yards, flinging aside everything in its path, temporary structures and highly trained agents alike. Hawkeye focused on the White Devil, his fingers tightening on his bowstring, unsure whether to fire. Then, as if sensing his gaze, the White Devil looked up. His eyes were devoid of emotion, utterly indifferent. That single look was enough to make Hawkeye abandon the idea of firing his special explosive arrows. He knew that his arrows would be useless against the White Devil, and that firing them would only cost him his life. Any attack from the White Devil was potentially fatal for him. He was a highly trained and capable agent, not afraid to die, but he refused to make pointless sacrifices. Inside a room filled with surveillance screens, loudspeakers blared the same warning on repeat. Alarm! The White Devil is here. A bald man in glasses listened to the alarm, and a glint appeared in his eye. He slipped into a secluded corner to send a message to an unknown IP address, then returned to his post to issue commands. Do not engage the White Devil. We can't beat him. No meaningless sacrifices. Agent Coulson, you've had previous contact with the White Devil. We're counting on you. In an interrogation room, Coulson was questioning Thor when he heard the alarm blare in his headset, followed by the message from command. The White Devil was here. Why? Coulson immediately thought of the hammer. If anything could attract the White Devil, it was that. Without hesitation, Coulson left the interrogation room and hurried outside. Left alone, Thor could still hear the alarms going off. The White Devil. Isn't that who Su-mu's been cosplaying as? Why is he here? Then it clicked. He remembered his conversations with Su-mu, how casually he dismissed breaking into a military base. The realization hit him. No, is he really the White Devil? Was he telling the truth all along? Outside, Coulson saw the devastation wrought by the terrifying repelling force. The rain continued to fall, turning the ground to mud. Agents lay scattered and soaked, a miserable sight, the figure hovering in the air only seemed more surreal in comparison. The rain was pushed away by an invisible barrier dozens of feet around him, unable to touch him. He was suspended there, untouched by the chaos around him, aloof and otherworldly. COSing watched as the invisible force field began to tear apart the temporary headquarters. He shouted, "Mr. Sumu! Mr. Sumu! It's COSing. We spoke at Stark Tower. Please stop. You're welcome here." Sumu, hovering in the air, heard COSing's voice. He retracted his repelling force and floated to COSing's side. Seeing Sumu stop his attack, COSing breathed a sigh of relief. "Mr. Sumu, there was no need for this. If you wanted to visit, you were welcome to." Sumu grinned to himself. If he didn't have the power he had right now, their attitude would probably be very different. He chuckled and said, "I was just saying hello. No harm intended." Looking at the downed agents and the half-destroyed base, COSing couldn't help but think, "That's your idea of a greeting?" But he knew that for the White Devil, this level of assault was actually quite restrained. COSing continued, "May I ask what brings you here?" Sumu started walking toward the center of the base. "You've captured my friend. I'm here to rescue him." COSing immediately thought of the man calling himself Thor, and a cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Thank God they hadn't hurt him. Otherwise, the situation might have spiraled completely out of control. Inside the base, Sumu headed straight for Thor's hammer. When he reached the impact crater, he found someone trying to lift it. It was obvious he wasn't worthy. No matter how hard he strained, the hammer wouldn't budge. Sumu instantly recognized the figure in the strange armor. He turned to COSing with a playful look and said, "Loki, you can't lift it because you're not worthy." Hearing this, Loki whirled around, startled. He hadn't expected some Midgardian to detect him while he was cloaked. Then, Loki's face hardened with arrogance. Even though Sumu was standing above him, he looked down at him with condescending disdain. Loki spread his arms and declared haughtily, "Mighty mortal of Midgard, you are deemed worthy to meet the future king of Asgard." Sumu looked at the arrogant Loki, then glanced at his character template fusion, now at 56%, and the powerful skills that came with it. A wicked smile played on his lips. Looks like someone needs to learn a lesson. Note, it is a very good fantasy farming novel. Readers who like it can go and have a look. I removed this line because it is unnecessary to the passage. Chapter 37, Virtual Style. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at Loki, Sumu approached him without a word. Loki frowned, clearly not expecting such rudeness from a Midgardian, especially directed at the king of Asgard. He conjured a dagger, ready to teach this man a lesson in respect. With a sneer, Loki advanced. "Humble Midgardian, it seems I must teach you to kneel before your betters." He anticipated an easy strike, but was surprised when the dagger stopped inches from Sumu, frozen in midair. "What power is this?" Before Loki could elaborate, an immense force erupted, stronger than a blow from Thor's own hammer. He was thrown back, shattering glass, tearing through metal supports, slicing through the rain, and finally crashing through the base's outer fence before skidding to a halt. "My back!" Loki was overwhelmed by pain, unable to believe what just happened. A Midgardian did this? When did they get so powerful? Before he could even catch his breath, an irresistible force yanked him back toward the white-haired figure in the distance. He tried to dig the dagger into the ground, but the pull was relentless. He was dragged back into the room, surrounded by shattered glass, back to the hammer he coveted, and face to face with the terrifying white-haired man. Sumu grinned, grabbing Loki's leg. Using his powers to enhance his strength, he swung Loki like a ragdoll, slamming him into the ground dozens of times. Finally, looking at Loki, dazed and questioning his existence, Sumu remarked, "No wonder Hulk likes this, it actually feels pretty good." COSing, who had wisely kept his distance during the onslaught, cautiously approached. "Mr. Sumu, who is this?" he asked, eyeing the horned man. Sumu, still savoring the sensation, replied casually, "Loki, son of Odin, second prince of Asgard, and a mischievous kid, give or take a few thousand years." "Loki? Like from the myths?" COSing asked incredulously. To the ancients, they were gods, beings with powerful technology and magic. But essentially, they're just aliens. Seeing Loki defeated so easily, COSing nodded, realizing that this god wasn't as strong as he thought. As agents led Loki to interrogation, Sumu paid little attention, knowing the trickster god would inevitably escape. In fact, he almost needed Loki to escape, because without it, the destroyer armor wouldn't appear, and there'd be no mind stone to acquire. Focusing on the hammer, Sumu reached out, grasped the handle, and tried to lift it. Unsurprisingly, he couldn't, his current strength inadequate to overcome Odin's enchantment. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, Thor was shocked to see his brother imprisoned. He knew Loki was too cunning to be caught by ordinary agents, so someone powerful must have apprehended him. "Loki, who defeated you?" he demanded. "Who captured you?" Loki, still reeling, glared at Thor and snarled, "Some damned white-haired man from Midgard. He insulted me, and he will pay." Thor immediately thought of Sumu, wondering if he was indeed the white-haired demon they discussed earlier. Just then, the door swung open, and a familiar figure stepped in, white hair, round sunglasses, but this time, the blue eyes hidden behind the glasses were visible, and they possessed a wildness, a blankness that Thor hadn't seen before. The white-haired man said, in a familiar yet strangely detached voice. "Thor, what a mess you've gotten yourself into." After freeing Thor, Sumu checked into a 5-star hotel. Waiting for the destroyer, he continued to absorb energy from the 2 arc reactors, steadily increasing his template fusion percentage. Over the next few days, the system update notifications became constant. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. Energy point +1. The arc reactors were growing noticeably dimmer. Soon he would have to convince Tony Stark to make new ones. After a few more minutes of absorption, Sumu heard something different. Energy point +1. Template fusion, 60%. New skill unlocked, virtual style Z. Chapter 38 Destroyer Armor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The border town was a wreck, with towering mechanical monsters tearing through everything. Agents and civilians who tried to stop them were already gone. Thor, along with Jane Foster and Dr. Eric, were busy evacuating people while the Warriors 3 and Sif charged headlong towards the destroyer armor. They knew they were outmatched by the destroyer, a machine Odin had painstakingly crafted. Still, they were confident they could hold it off long enough to get everyone clear. Just like Loki had approached Sumu days before, Fandral, sporting a thick brown beard, bravely lunged at the destroyer with his companions backing him up, but before he could even throw a punch, the destroyer smacked him in the face, sending him flying into a parked car. He was down for the count. As the destroyer aimed a laser from its head to finish Fandral off, Sif leaped from a rooftop, driving her spear into the destroyer's neck. They briefly let out a sigh of relief. Just when they thought it was over, the destroyer lit up again. Untouched, it unleashed another blast, forcing them back. In seconds, the destroyer had routed the Warriors 3 and Sif. They finally understood the sheer power it possessed. Seeing his friends injured and the destroyer still wreaking havoc, Thor felt the weight of responsibility crash down on him. He stood and began walking towards the destroyer. He'd use his life to protect the innocent. That's what a king was supposed to do. But as Thor braced for the end, footsteps broke the silence. In the abandoned town, they were impossible to miss. Everyone turned to see a young man with white hair and sunglasses, hands casually in his pockets. He seemed unfazed by the carnage, by the terrifying destroyer looming in the firelight. Chewing gum like he was out for a stroll, he casually strolled past Jane Foster and the others. "Hey Jane, Professor Eric, fancy meeting you here." Seeing Sumu, Jane's eyes lit up. "Sumu, you have to help Thor. He's going to die." Before Sumu could answer, Sif shook her head. "Earthling, give it up. Let Thor die with honor. You can't stop the destroyer." Ignoring Sif, Sumu nodded to Jane. "All right, but you owe me a favor. And you have to come to me first for treatment when you get sick." Sure, he was here for the destroyer armor, but getting Jane Foster in his debt was a bonus. When the reality stone took over, his reversal technique should be strong enough to extract it from her. Another delivery on the way. Not understanding his meaning, Jane quickly agreed. desperate to save Thor. "Okay, I promise. I'll come to you the minute I feel sick." Sumu smiled, pleased. He turned to face the destroyer, but a figure blocked his path. It was Sif, the only woman among the Asgardian warriors. "Turn back," she said, her face stern. "You can't defeat the destroyer. Don't steal Thor's glory." Sumu scoffed. "Glory? You mean getting slaughtered?" Sif gave a warning. "For Asgardians, dying on the battlefield and being remembered is the highest honor. Leave now." The warriors 3 and Sif didn't have much patience for Earthlings. They looked down on Midgard. They hadn't attacked Sumu yet only because he knew Thor, but Sumu had lost his patience for the legendary goddess blocking his way. He grinned at Sif. Just when she thought he'd retreat, he swung his right hand hard. Sif was blasted away by a powerful force, smashing through buildings before collapsing motionless on the ground. The warriors 3, who were watching from the sidelines, and Jane Foster and the others were stunned. The Asgardians couldn't believe it. How could an Earthling be so powerful? He'd taken down Sif in a single blow. Fear quickly turned to rage. They charged at Sumu. An Earthling attacking a goddess was unforgivable. Then, before Jane Foster and the others could blink, the warriors 3 were also blown away, crashing through buildings and blacking out. Even knowing Sumu was the white-haired devil, Jane was still shocked. Was he really this strong? More terrifying than the gods of legend. As for Dr. Eric and Darcy, who still didn't know Sumu's true identity, they could only stare in wide-eyed disbelief. So he really was the white-haired demon? Not just some cosplayer. And the white-haired demon was really that powerful? Having dealt with the Asgardian fools, Sumu instantly appeared in front of Thor, confronting the destroyer. Seeing Sumu, Thor was relieved but quickly turned grim. "Sumu, don't be reckless. My father built the destroyer to fight the Celestials. It's made of URU alloy. You can't beat it. Get out of here. Loki wants me. At least if he kills me, he'll leave everyone else alone." Before Thor could protest any further, the destroyer's body glowed intensely. A blast of energy, far more powerful than anything before, hurtled towards Sumu. Loki, controlling the destroyer from Asgard, saw the white-haired man through the destroyer's eyes, a grin spreading across his face. Wasn't that the bastard who humiliated him a few days ago? This was the perfect revenge. Even if he was strong, there was no way he could stand up to the destroyer. Loki ordered the destroyer to attack with everything it had. He'd been holding back before, but now, facing the one who'd made him look like a fool, he unleashed the destroyer's full might. The blazing energy beam raced towards Sumu. Thor couldn't bear to watch. Even if he was powerful, he was no match for the destroyer. He'd be vaporized, reduced to nothing, but the next instant, Thor's face was filled with absolute disbelief. Loki, in Asgard, recoiled. Through the destroyer's vision, he saw a fist meet the laser head-on, slamming into the destroyer's chest. Then, a terrifying storm of black and red lightning erupted between them. Chapter 39 Energy Absorption Level 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Black lightning detonated between Sumu and the destroyer armor, obliterating everything within 100 feet. The massive metal figure was blasted backward from the dust cloud. Even after that devastating punch, Sumu wasn't unscathed. The destroyer armor's energy beams packed more punch than Cyclops' optic blasts, and even the level 3 unlimited technique couldn't fully block them. Laser burns covered Sumu's chest, but the reversal technique healed him rapidly. He watched, stoked, as the destroyer armor lumbered back to its feet a few hundred yards away, its chassis completely intact. This was the first time since his arrival that Sumu had been at such a disadvantage right out of the gate, but he wasn't bummed. He was pumped. In the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, Black Flash not only multiplies the attack power by 2.5, but it also catapults the user into the zone. In this state, strength, speed, spell power, reaction time, everything gets a 20% boost, unlocking abilities beyond comprehension. The moment he unleashed Black Flash, Sumu hit this state. He felt an unprecedented surge of power. his body and energy moving faster than ever, the destroyer armor locked onto Sumu, blasting another laser beam. Using Cang to teleport out of the line of fire, Sumu reappeared in front of the destroyer. With no laser to worry about, he unloaded on the metal monstrosity again. Level 3 6 eyes for precision energy control and level 3 energy absorption for mastery maximized Sumu's chances of triggering Black Flash. Black and red lightning exploded again, and the destroyer armor went flying once more, though not as far this time. The terrifying azure black hole was drawing it in. The immense gravity from Cang pulled the destroyer armor into the azure void, but unlike before, the black hole couldn't hurt it. The destroyer armor adjusted to the sudden gravitational pull and stabilized itself. Sumu wasn't fazed. He expected the destroyer armor to shrug off Cang's effects. If Odin couldn't resist Cang, how would he wear the destroyer armor into battle against the Celestials? His grin widened, his body thrumming with active energy. Conversion mana surged through him, and the azure mana around him seemed to boil. Extending his index finger toward the destroyer armor, which was still fighting the pull of Cang, a huge smile spread across Sumu's face. Reversal technique, spell power raced to the tip of his finger, forming a black and red singularity about the size of a ping-pong ball. As soon as Sumu finished speaking, the singularity shot through the air, shattering the sound barrier and disappearing from his fingertip to slam into the destroyer armor's head. Boom! A catastrophic explosion erupted, sending the destroyer armor crashing away again. The repulsive force from the reversal technique was far greater than that of Black Flash. The destroyer armor was slammed back thousands of feet, plowing a massive trench in its wake before finally stopping. The shockwave reached the distant town, shaking the ground like a major earthquake. Jane Foster and the warriors 3 of Asgard arrived at Thor's side, staring in disbelief at the battle unfolding in the distance. Even Thor, at his full power, couldn't do this, Sif muttered. Her previous understanding shattered. Who knew the people of Midgard could be this strong? Sumu didn't let up after releasing the reversal technique. His 6 eyes showed him that the destroyer armor in the dust cloud was still intact, though its chest armor was slightly damaged but rapidly regenerating. Sumu griped to himself. Why hadn't the destroyer armor put up this much of a fight against Thor in the movie? Loki must really care about Thor. These little tips are just the classic Tsundere routine. Even as Sumu was running his mouth in his head, the destroyer armor charged again. Sumu was ecstatic. This was a whole new ballgame compared to fighting the Hulk. They traded blows, with Black Flash detonating at random as energy beams ripped trenches across the ground. With each exchange, Sumu's skill levels climbed, the system continuously pinging him. Energy point +1. 6 eyes experience +1. Energy absorption experience +1. Unlimited spell experience +1. Spell forward song experience +1. Spell reverse he experience +1. Another energy beam sliced into Sumu, piercing his arm and vaporizing a chunk of flesh, but in an instant, the arm knitted itself back together. The terrifying energy beam suddenly stopped by his flesh, unable to cause further damage. Finally, in the heat of battle, his energy absorption skill reached the next level. Energy absorption experience +1. Congratulations. Your skill energy absorption has been upgraded. Energy absorption LV4, January 5000 can absorb almost all types of energy, with extremely high absorption speed and energy storage limit. After the energy absorption leveled up, Sumu's body underwent a transformation. His bones and muscles were remade to better store energy, increasing his body's storage capacity several-fold, even boosting his spirit, giving him finer and faster energy control. The once unstoppable energy beams now felt like a gentle breeze, the energy absorption speed dwarfing the destroyer armor's output. However, the destroyer armor, controlled remotely by Loki, could only manage that level of strength. Against Sumu's level 4 energy absorption, it could no longer pose a threat. Although his other skills had also gained a little from the energy absorption boost, Sumu had no intention of using them. He was itching to go hand-to-hand with the destroyer armor. Ignoring the searing energy beams, he ripped off his shredded shirt, showing off his chiseled muscles. Energy absorption level 4 fully strengthened his body. With the potent physical skills granted by mana manipulation and the system, along with the pinpoint control granted by the 6 eyes, Sumu charged straight into the onslaught of energy beams. Boom! The amplified force of his fist, magnified 2.5 times by the red and black lightning, sent the destroyer armor crashing to the ground. The impact radiated outwards, the ground splitting apart as it quickly caved in, forming a crater hundreds of feet across. Crossing into the Marvel Universe, Bai only had a numerical panel and the chat group of the heavens. I thought the chat group of the heavens was my golden ticket, but I was banned by the omniscient and omnipotent immortal at the start. On the contrary, the numerical panel without hope is even more heavyweight. Talent 1, endless. There is no upper limit, no bottleneck, no weakness, and you can become stronger with hard work. Talent 2, rest of the strong. For every 1 point of attribute improvement, an additional 0.1 attribute points to be used are added. As long as you exercise, you can increase your physique infinitely like Saitama, but, isn't the power of each attribute increase a bit wrong? 1 point of strength can't catch a chicken, but 5 points can move at supersonic speed and chase the Hulk all over the street. 20 points can drip blood to regenerate and crush the planet. 50 points can directly blow up the universe with 1 punch. When the physical fitness shown by each attribute increase is not linear, but increases by percentage, exponential, or even factorial, Bai knows that he is going to make it. Bai, this panel is probably designed by the physical education teacher. Good, good, good. Deep Blue, give me a lot of points. In the New York Battle of Avengers 1, Bai punched the Chidari fleet and grabbed the purple potato spirit's scalp and said, "You are called Thanos." Chapter 40 The Terrifying Power of the Virtual Style. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 40 The Terrifying Power of the Imaginary Style, Z. With energy beams proving ineffective, the destroyer armor was no match for Sumu. Each attack from Sumu absorbed energy from the destroyer, making him stronger. Even after completely exhausting his physical strength, he was always at peak performance. Reaching level 4 energy absorption was a huge leap. Now, Sumu could absorb almost any energy within range, even without direct contact. He could easily absorb and manipulate nearly all energy types, except for bioenergy, chemical energy, and a few others. Like right now, seeing the energy beam hurtling toward him, Sumu clenched his fist. As the beam neared, it twisted, forming a long, glowing spear that he plunged into the destroyer's body, causing a violent explosion. But this was just a basic application of energy, nowhere near the power unleashed by actual techniques. The same energy could be amplified with the right skill. Another dark blast sent the destroyer flying. It couldn't withstand Sumu's attacks as easily anymore. The armor on its face was damaged, but it was repairing itself at an alarming rate. After a few minutes, Sumu had fully adjusted to level 4 energy absorption. He vanished and reappeared in front of the destroyer armor, placing his palm gently on its chest. Instantly, a terrifying black and red singularity erupted at point-blank range, the intense repulsive force ripping through the destroyer armor's chest, causing major damage. Seeing the destroyer armor already recovering, Sumu was impressed by Odin's creation. Loki's control of the destroyer armor wasn't even close to its full potential. What would it be like with Odin piloting it? But Sumu was done playing around. The destroyer armor was no longer a threat. He took off his sunglasses and tossed them aside. He intertwined the fingers of his left and right hands, his eyes filled with excitement as he stared at the destroyer armor. Spell forward, Cang. A half-human-sized azure black hole materialized behind him on the left. Spell reverse, another half-human-sized black-red singularity formed on his right, but it flickered, unstable from being forced into existence. Black lightning crackled, destroying everything around it, but the nearby energy absorbed the rogue lightning, so Sumu was completely unharmed. Finally, Sumu snapped his fingers, announcing the name of this ultimate technique formed by fusing two powerful spells. Imaginary Style, Z. The azure black hole and black-red singularity merged. With level 4 energy absorption providing complete control and his memories guiding the technique, a dark purple mass formed and slammed into the destroyer armor, accompanied by a crackle of purple lightning. A dazzling purple light blotted out everything, eclipsing the world around them. All anyone could see was a giant purple sphere hurtling forward, obliterating everything in its path. In an instant, the devastating sphere tore through the destroyer armor, continued across the Gobi Desert, plowed through a mountain, and vanished into the distance. When the dust settled, Thor and the others stared in shock at a massive trench, tens of meters wide, stretching from the white-haired demon to the horizon. Even distant mountains couldn't stop it. The supposedly indestructible destroyer armor was gone, completely vaporized, not even a scrap of URU metal remained. In Asgard, after seeing the destroyer armor's final transmission, Loki collapsed. What kind of monster was that? In a lavish room, Odin, in a deep sleep behind a layer of transparent glass, snapped his one eye open, filled with terror. Another ancient one. In a mysterious hall, a kind-looking bald woman set down her tea, turned her head in a certain direction, and whispered. He's grown this much already. Truly a unique existence in the multiverse, existing only by itself without isotopes. In a hidden military base, the scene in the Gobi Desert was projected onto a huge screen from a surveillance satellite. Colonel Stryker pointed at the massive gully that seemed to cleave the desert in two and shouted. The white-haired demon is this powerful. If we don't launch the annihilation plan now, there won't be another chance. He'll control the entire United States, a general immediately chimed in. I agree, that the other senior officers nodded in unison. Agree. Agree. Soon, everyone was in agreement, the white-haired demon had to be stopped. Stryker smiled, telling the generals. Gentlemen, the white-haired demon suppression device and the space-slashing sentinels are fully operational and ready to deploy. Minutes later, a supersonic helicopter took off from the military base nearest Sumu, heading toward him at top speed. At the end of the massive trench, Sumu grinned, examining the aftermath of the imaginary Style Z. The attack shouldn't have been that powerful at level 1. Using level 4 energy absorption to forcibly unleash it was what made the difference. But that kind of attack took a lot out of him, leaving him gasping for air, almost completely drained. Still, thanks to level 4 energy absorption, he was rapidly absorbing sunlight, ambient heat, and even the energy from the arc reactors, quickly replenishing his reserves. He was close to full strength again. The two arc reactors floating next to him had gone dark, completely drained. Looking at the reactors, Sumu thought. I'll need to ask Stark for new arc reactors. I should also prepare to get the space stone. Level 4 energy absorption should be enough to handle it. After fully replenishing his energy, Sumu checked his progress. 2 of his skills had leveled up again. Please read and collect.